how can we deny that this is a problem for all of us? I mean, clearly a problem for British Jews. It was brought home, by an attack by a man called Jihad al-Shami, who we now know, since we last recorded an episode, called 999 and said, "I'm killing Jews on behalf of the Islamic State." How much clearer does the message need to be that this is a serious problem in Britain?
No, absolutely. And one of the horrible conclusions I came to in the wake of the attack in Manchester was I was almost slightly surprised it took this long. And I'm not, that's nothing to dwell on too much, but it's a reminder that the kind of drumbeat that has been going on, not just since October the 7th, but before it as well, I think it's worth saying, this sort of ambient anti-Semitism which has been building up, the fact that even before October the 7th, Jews made up about something like a quarter of the victims of all religiously motivated hate crimes in the UK. The fact that you would see stories crop up from time to time constantly of just elderly Jewish men in North London being sucker punched in the street, and it never really got out of the Islington Tribune or whatever it was. This was never really confronted in a way that if you saw these constant outbursts of racist violence and animus in relation to any other community, it would cause some genuine soul searching. It's an example I often go back to, but there's a Jewish cemetery in Kent which was desecrated 8 times in 10 years, and people just don't know that these things were taking place. October the 7th happens and it puts all of it on steroids. And again, there's no reckoning with why this might have taken place, the extent to which that, as we've been discussing, anti-Semitism has become entirely bound up now with anti-Zionism, and the way in which the old tropes that were previously levelled at the Jews are just projected onto Israel to kind of give plausible deniability to the people doing the projection. And then you get to the point of Manchester and you do think, I'm surprised it took this long, partly because of that build-up of hatred, which has been left entirely unchecked, even by the sorts of organisations which are nominally devoted to challenging hatred, but also because of the fact that we've been so utterly complacent about this problem of Islamist extremism. And as we've been discussing already, this is something which has menaced us time and time again, which has been inflicted on the British population time and time again. That in Manchester in 2017, 22 people were murdered by a jihadist in the name of the Islamic State, many of them very young girls, and yet even now we can't take that threat seriously. So it's one of those things where there's a grim inevitability about what's going on at the moment, and whilst that's not much comfort for British Jews, I'm sure there are a lot of people who recognise this and see it. It's just that the political establishment have blinded themselves to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say just 2 things come to mind in response to that. I mean, the first is that one of the things that Jihad al-Shami reportedly shouted when he was on the rampage in Manchester was, "This is what you get for killing our children."
Yeah.
And that was very revealing, because the idea of Jews relishing killing children is an ancient idea, beginning in 1144 in Norwich with the blood libel, and then spreading around the world. And it's that idea has been at the centre of the animus against Israel for the past 2 years. The cooking of the figures to make out as if women and children are most of the casualties, the fabrication or the manipulation of the images to show you mainly pictures of or only pictures of civilians. I mean, people they watch TV, they don't ask, okay, all I'm seeing is civilian casualties, where are all the fighters?
Yeah.
They don't ask why those fighters have been edited out of the pictures they've been seeing by Hamas, not by the BBC, but yes. And ideally, Hamas wants them to see pictures of children, and Israel has become known as the child killers, but they're not. They're not the child killers. They're trying to kill Hamas, who are trying to get civilians killed. And that idea, the old blood libel, it's fascinating that that's what, above all, he shouted. The other point was extremely interesting, but it's gone completely out of my mind. But I will note that Jihad's father was called Faraj. So
There we go.
go.
The fact that his name was Jihad,
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me back to previous terror attacks, but one of the terrorists in the first London Bridge attack, when he was on that Channel 4 or ITV show called the Jihadi Next Door, hiding in plain sight doesn't really do it justice.
It's come back to me.
There we go.
Thank you for doing that. The Manchester Arena bombing.
Yeah.
I think that for me, and there's a bit in my book about it, it says so much about what's going on in our society in this complacency towards Islamic terrorism. Because there's a bit in my book where I talk about Rory Stewart, and he goes on Sam Harris's podcast last year, and Sam Harris tries to get him to explore the link between suicide bombing and Islam. Why? And Rory just won't accept that there is a link. He says there's violence in every religion, violence in every part of the world. Even the Buddhists are violent. And he then, at one absurd point, compares jihadi John leaving Britain to go to fight for Islamic State to himself leaving Oxford and going off to manage a province in Iraq. So the spirit of adventurism and so on. And he won't accept the link between suicide bombing and Islam. And he then, on a subsequent podcast, calls Sam Harris Islamophobic for making that connection. Now, fast forward to the Manchester Arena bombing, when Salman Abedi walks into the Manchester Arena with that heavy backpack on.
Yeah.
And the security guard, Kyle Lawler, later told an inquest that he saw him, was suspicious of him, and thought, no, I mustn't be Islamophobic and draw the connection between a Muslim walking in with a heavy backpack and a suicide bomber. And so he stopped himself from stopping the attack because he feared that he was Islamophobic. Now, I'm not saying he was a devotee of Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, but this stuff has been pumped into our culture by what I call in my book the centrist fundamentalists, who are just determined that we must all stop thinking for ourselves and start thinking along the lines of their ideology, with horrible results.